What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Hodl My Beer. Super excited today. I have Hillbilly Will on with us. Will, how's it going?
It's going really well, buddy. How about you, Trey?
Good, man. Good. I'm excited to put this one out. It's been a few weeks we've been trying to put this together. So yeah, we're gonna go through a little bit of kind of Will's backstory. And some of I think we want to talk, just like current events. I don't do a lot of shows where we talk current events. Most of it's pretty specified to certain targets. So we're just gonna let it rip and see where we go from there. So Will, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about kind of like your backstory, and kind of when Bitcoin kind of clicked for you, and we'll go from there.
Okay, it was spring of 2020, and we had like a retirement account, and this was before everything hit. And I was trying to get ready, and my thesis was that maybe 10 or 20 million Americans would lose their job, and we had an account, and it was completely full of just Apple stock. And
Yep.
I thought, well, I don't think I need exposure to a company that makes $1,400 telephones when all these people are going to lose their job. So I
Yeah.
sold it all. And
When
then,
you just to
yeah,
stop you real quick, when you were talking
hmm
about losing their job, are you talking about like height of COVID when everything
yes,
was
it
kind
was,
of
this was
hitting
like
the fan?
February of 2020
Okay.
before. So I sold, and then there's like a 20 or 30% drop.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Every
hey, look at me. Look how good I did.
yeah.
And then it ripped. It went up 100%. And I missed the whole thing. So
Got it.
that was my first like red flag that maybe I don't really understand how the financial markets work because I thought
Yep.
I did up until then. So this is around the same time I was working at a data center and they sent us home to work remotely and we had a meeting and the guy, our lead account guy said, you all have this extra time, maybe 30, 40 minutes a day. Why don't you pick up a new skill? So I was sitting there and I thought that's a good idea. I said, instead of picking up a work skill, I'm going to learn about Bitcoin because I've heard about it. I didn't know anything about it whatsoever.
Yep.
So after the meeting, I went in the living room, typed in Bitcoin, and I don't exactly remember the first time, but I bet you BitBoy came up because he was so popular at the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was my
Yeah.
first delve into Bitcoin, but
Well, it's
I'm
good
still
that
going
you
down the
stayed.
rabbit hole. Yeah,
It's good that you stayed after your first exposure was BitBoy. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So, no, I that's great. So you go down the rabbit hole there. Are you still sitting on cash at this point from converting the
No,
Apple stock? Got it.
no,
Got it. Got it.
that all went into Bitcoin.
Got it. Got it. Oh, okay. But like you were sitting on cash when you like before you learned about Bitcoin. And then it
Yes,
obviously went okay. Got it.
yes.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
And yeah, so becoming a maxi, there's usually like the road is paved with broken bones and bloody noses and lots of
Yep.
pain. And I missed out on, a six-figure increase there, and that was basically our entire net worth. I mean, we worked a
Yep.
long time to get that. And so that was my first red flag, and I didn't really understand things. But then I bought the Bitcoin Standard,
Yep.
and I kept reading, and I wasn't just watching like BitBoy, the silly things with all these altcoins, even though
Yeah.
I did start going into altcoins. But I wanted to learn specifically about Bitcoin and what made it valuable. And it was just fascinating. I couldn't stop learning. I'm still learning. There's still
Yeah.
lots to learn, even 5 years later. But it's just a fascinating thing, and it's literally the only thing I trust now with my money. I don't trust. I mean, look at GameStop. They printed like 7 million shares a while back. It's out of thin air. If you're
Yeah.
playing with someone else and they can change the rules at any time they want, that's not good for you. So that's why I like
Yeah, exactly.
Bitcoin. Yeah.
Exactly. No, Safe's book's great. That was the second book that I read, when I got into Bitcoin. And I'm glad it was the second one I read because it just wasn't something that I would have been interested in. Like it would have lost me a little bit in the beginning. Safe does like a very, very good job of breaking things down, but I
Hmm.
think you need to have the interest when you read Safe's book, not be like, like it's not a book you can give to your friend who doesn't know anything about Bitcoin that's not even curious about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah, I
lot of
sent it. Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna say I sent it to a friend down in North Carolina, and I texted him the other day. Said, "Have you read it yet?" And he said, "No." So
Yeah.
it'll probably just collect dust, but I
Yeah, no,
tried.
I no, you tried, man. It's I remember reading it and at the end of it being super, convicted in all of these things and everything kind of made sense, but you know, there was like that interest beforehand in it before I did that. And I read Jason Williams's book, Jason A. Williams, going parabolic on Twitter. He wrote a book called Bitcoin Hard Money You Can't Fuck With. And that
Nice.
was like that was more my speed,
Yeah.
and kind of really dumbed it down for me. And then I was like, okay, like now here's the next phase, right? Is reading Safe's book. And I think, in an interesting point, man, about learning something every step of the way. I mean, like we just talked about even before we went live here, the difficulty adjustment is something that's just like so profound that,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, go
Yeah.
ahead.
It's sort of like mining gold. I mean, we've been mining gold for 6,000 years, and they're going to do basically the same amount in 150 years or something. And all the gold just laying on the ground at first, it's easy to get to. It's not very valuable.
Yeah.
And as time goes on, it becomes more valuable, and it's literally the exact same thing playing out, just so much faster. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
No, absolutely, man. And so you get into Bitcoin then. So your background,
Mhm.
you play it much more coy on Twitter. Obviously, like you're a smart guy. You're well read, but you go by Hillbilly Will.
Yeah,
You know, so
I
like
have fun with it.
yeah, you have to, man. You have to. So like what? Why don't you tell everybody kind of your background? Was there anything about um after you get into your background? Was there anything about Bitcoin that like naturally made sense because of your background, or was it uncorrelated?
Well, I work with a lot of encryption and a lot of databases, things of that sort, a lot of high tech stuff, and it's all remote. And so there's that aspect that it's sort of like a database, and it's
Yeah,
obviously encrypted. Uh, and like it's SHA 256. We
yeah,
have that at work, and I'm just kind of
got it.
I grin anytime I see it. I think, well, if it's good enough for Bitcoin, it's probably good enough for our data.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So SHA-256, the hash function, obviously, in Bitcoin. I didn't realize that that was used for encryption elsewhere. I think that's also
Yeah.
another interesting point about this is that people think Bitcoin is just like it's the first time anybody tried digital money and it worked. You know what I mean? Like there was so many different aspects that were taken from the work before it to like
Oh yeah.
make this work. You know what
Yeah,
I
there was
mean?
about 40, maybe 40 years of failure, but it wasn't really
Yep.
failure. It was just learning how it didn't work.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then the proof of work kind of solved it. So anybody that's listening, I would definitely check out like the history of all of these, like e-cash systems that have been,
Hmm.
they tried to implement for, 20, 30, like you said, 40 years, ever since the internet was made. Like there were people that were in front of this. And the history of all this stuff is super interesting because you have people from like the 70s and 80s that like saw all this coming and not just Bitcoin, but they saw the other side of it with the central bank digital currencies
Oh yeah.
and the control that you know the internet could be a tool to enslave people or it could be a tool to liberate people. And I think all of that stuff was so profound. So you obviously worked in like the cybersecurity space. There's a little
Hmm.
bit of you know I would say a little bit of blur over into the Bitcoin space, and that stuff for me. I'm not a tech guy at all. So the tech aspect of Bitcoin took a long time for me to like really grasp. Luckily for me, I'm also like when I see enough good points and enough smart people making the points that understand things that I don't, I'm like, okay, like
Oh
this
yeah.
is, let's let's jump in and then figure it out as you go,
Right.
as opposed to kind of missing the boat. So you're not to dox you here, but like you're in the Midwest, or not Midwest, like I would say like the middle of the country. Have you seen? I want to kind of pivot. We'll get back to the Bitcoin and like the current events. Have you seen your community kind of being eaten alive by inflation? People and like what's that impact been like? Boots on the ground.
Yeah, it's been really bad here since the big print or whatever 2020. We have some
Yeah,
friends and we had a spigot out back that broke and had to have it fixed. It was like $700. And we had
yeah,
some friends that said if that happened, there's no way we would have been able to just drop $700. Just not happening. And they both work. And they both
yeah.
have degrees, 4-year degrees. And it's just sad that that's the state of affairs this country's in right now.
Yeah, it's tough, man. That like I was thinking back, so obviously a little bit younger. I graduated high school in 2012,
Mhm.
so 13 years ago. I was talking to somebody on Twitter the other day, and it was like when I graduated high school, my plan was to get a job making low six figures, 100, 110K a year. And like that was going to be it. Like you could support a family of four off that. Like I grew up, in the midst of the great financial crisis. And even then, I can remember, we were a very open family. I knew how much my parents made. It was a little bit over 100K a year, but we had like a really good life. Like it was me, my mom, my stepdad, and my little sister, and like we were upper middle class with
Oh yeah,
with them making 100, 110, 120 grand a year. We lived in a very nice house in a very nice neighborhood, and we didn't have super luxury stuff, right? Like I had to buy my own car when I turned 17. Like it
oh
wasn't
yeah,
crazy money, but
right.
we had everything we needed growing up. And I think that shift's been just so crazy over the last 10,
Yeah,
15 years.
I mean, look at The Simpsons. They started out like 1988.
Yeah.
Homer had a high school diploma. Marge didn't work, and they had a two-story house, two
Yep.
cars, and three kids, and it was no problem. Now it's
Yeah.
comical to think that's just not reality anymore.
It's not sustainable either, man.
Mm-mm.
And I think that's the main political divide. I think that like I'm obviously conservative because of how far kind of left the other party has swung, but I think that most of the people agree that something's fucked up. It's
Oh
just a
yeah,
matter of like it's a matter of how do we fix it,
yeah. Like all these people that are protesting, that are like seem to be like socialists, and they're mad at all this, that, and the other. They have legitimate claims, but they're just wrong at the mad people, or at the wrong people. They think that socialism is the answer, but it's really just money printing has done so much damage that if we went to a hard money standard, uh, all these inflation problems wouldn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's spot on. And to further, I guess, emphasize that point, the reason that we're at where we're at is not because of capitalism, it's because of socialism for the big guy, right? The big
Yes,
banks, the big company, like what you're seeing right now is not a product of capitalism. It's a
no,
product of socialism,
crony
and
capitalism. Yeah,
exactly, it's crony capital. Like capitalism by its nature is a free market. It's as little interference as possible.
right.
But I think a lot of the people, there's a big misconception on the other side that, I've heard people call this late stage capitalism, blah, blah, like whatever you want to call it. But like, let's call it what it is. It's giving handouts to it's giving handouts to the big companies and the people that have political capital. The little guy has a different set of laws that they have to abide under. And the left's way to fix it is, well, let's give handouts to everybody, right? Which
Hmm.
that doesn't work,
No,
because when you give that much power to a government, we've already given them enough. You see what happens, right? So
yeah.
giving them more power is not gonna it's not gonna solve any of the issues that we have.
All this was set in motion. I mean, probably I guess 1971 really, but it really got into hyperdrive when they came out with the phrase "too big to fail."
Yeah.
and they just bailed out, what was it, $787 billion. And you're allowed to lose all this money, and there's no risk because if you lose it, the government will bail you out. But if you make a $787 billion profit, well, you keep all of it, and we don't get any of it. So
Yeah.
we lose both ways.
Well, yeah, and to go back to the books that we talked about too, we were talking about Safe's book in the beginning and Jason's
Mhm.
book. Obviously Larry Lepard just put out the big print. I think that's the best, simplest way. Yep. Glad you show that on camera again. Let's give it Larry that shout out. There it is. Um, so yeah, no, I think that's the biggest way to sum it up. But the thing that I got most aggravated about, um, when I read that book, because I was 12 years old, 13 years old when the great financial crisis happened. Like I didn't, I remember going through it because our family almost, lost their house. We were, 2 weeks away from getting foreclosed on.
Wow.
Um, so I remember all of that, but I didn't know why it was happening. And then you go back and you look at it, and I've obviously seen The Big Short and kind of put the pieces together of what happened then. Being that I'm in the I'm in loans for a living right now, so it's important to know kind of what led to that crisis. Um, the fact that they got fucking bonuses the year after, like that made my blood boil
Yeah.
so fucking bad.
Nobody
These
went to prison, nothing.
no, nobody went to prison. They gave out bonuses. That shit was absolutely crazy to me. And nobody talks about it, right? It's
Yeah.
it's and
They
then
had,
go
yeah,
ahead,
go ahead.
go ahead.
They had these no doc mortgages. You ever heard of that? That's where you come in and
Yeah,
you do no documentation
that
whatsoever because their thesis was, well, housing goes up forever, so there's no risk. Well,
yep.
there is
And then
risk.
the adjustable rate mortgages kicked in and people couldn't afford it. And look, when you got five houses, you sell all the ones that you're not living in. You know what
Yeah,
I
and when
mean?
gas goes to $4 a gallon, and then you can't afford to drive to work, and then you can't make your payment, and then there
Yep.
is risk.
They were called the ninja loans, no income, no job.
Wow, that's crazy. I
Yep.
can't believe that was
Yeah.
ever a thing, and it wasn't that
Yeah.
long ago. It was just a few years ago.
No, and what's bad about that is like when you look at the numbers of how much money was printed, COVID was even worse. We're seeing
Yeah,
that
oh yeah,
we're seeing that now. And so it's not even the reason that I've gotten pulled into politics is it's not even a political issue anymore. I mean, this is do or die. And I
hmm
really think the last election was super super important because we're going to start to see this shit unravel over the next year. I mean, there's just too much debt and they're going to have to
yeah,
print a ton of it and inflation's going to run like when you realize how much money they're going to have to print to service all this stuff, it's going to run wild.
oh yeah,
And then you combine that with the fact that um like all of these tariffs and all this stuff that's going on, like all that stuff's absolutely necessary. Like we need to make shit in America again. You
yeah,
have to.
yeah. He's using it as an to get people to the table to negotiate, and there's going to be all sorts of short-term volatility, and we could, us Bitcoiners, we love volatility, so it doesn't bother us. But everybody else, I don't want anybody else getting hurt. But it is necessary. A little bit of short-term pain for some long-term gain. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's what's going on with the Bitcoin price. That was kind of a natural. I didn't
Mhm.
plan it that way, but it was a natural segue into what's going on with the Bitcoin price right now. I think markets are just uncertain, man. There's a lot of stuff with tariffs.
Mhm.
Markets are, when you think of Wall Street, you think that they got all this money. They're going to be very rational. It's not the case. Everybody's human. It's all emotional, and you sell what you can first, not what you want to sell, right?
Yeah.
You sell. This is why Bitcoin's always going to be volatile to an extent. It's because it's so liquid. It's what people love about it. It's like when you
Yeah.
hit the oh shit button, it's the first, like you can trade it 24/7,
Yeah.
365. So it's a leading indicator. It's really the closest thing, that we have to a free market now. And
A
and so I
global free
think
market. Yeah, a truly global one.
yeah, and I think there might be. I was talking to Stacy about this when she was on, the last episode. I think there could be a little bit of gimmicks being played, but I don't think
Hmm
it's at a massive scale. Like I
No.
think, because at some point people know that they're going to get wrecked, and everybody saw what happened to FTX. And nobody
Yep.
wants to, nobody wants to be, cellmates with Sam Bankman-Fried in prison. So
Scam Bankman fraud.
yeah, Scam Bankman-Fried. So no, that's a great point, man. And I think we're going to continue to see volatility until some of this stuff, kind of shakes up. But I also think it's a really good thing, man, because you have inflation's going to run hot. They have to print no matter what. But you'd rather use this opportunity and kind of kill two birds with one stone to get manufacturing back done in the U.S.
Yeah.
Especially in that part of the country where you're from. I mean, I think that
Mhm.
would have a huge impact.
Yeah, it'd be massive here. I live in an economically depressed area, and if we could bring some jobs back here, energy jobs, manufacturing, anything would be wonderful. We really
Yeah,
need it.
yeah, absolutely. So I guess going off that, we've seen this week. GameStop obviously announced. They originally announced that they were going to put it on the balance sheet, and then they announced some sort of stock offering,
Hmm.
to aggressively buy it and not even use any of their cash at first, I guess. Have you seen it? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. I think everybody at some point will, or every company will put at least a little bit of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and I'm surprised it's taken this long actually, but yeah, it's inevitable. And
Yeah,
I was surprised that they was it like 0% debt? It's like 1.3 billion or something. If they have
yeah.
cash,
One,
why don't they
one.
just deploy that? But
I mean,
yeah,
if you're getting
I'm
if you're
not the
getting zero
expert.
if you're getting 0%, you might as well keep the cash reserves and
Yeah, I guess
and
so. Because
it's free money at that point.
yeah, if they're expecting some sort of headwinds coming in the next few years, you might want that cash reserve. But
Yeah,
you can use the Bitcoin too.
yeah, exactly. I'm really excited about um, the Bitcoin lending products that are coming out. I don't know if that's something you've looked into at all, but I think that, um, and I can go into more detail on this too, but I think that people don't want to sell their Bitcoin, but up until this point, you've had to sell it, right? Like if you want
Hmm.
to, yeah, me and my girlfriend just took our dog to the vet the other day. You know what I mean? Like that's a bill
Hmm.
that comes out of nowhere. It's like, do you want to sell Bitcoin? No, but like if you're 99% allocated and the dog has to go to the vet, you got to sell your Bitcoin. You know what
Yeah,
I
you don't
mean?
have a choice sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm really intrigued on the lending products that are coming out in this space. Again, do so responsibly. That's my story of how I got wiped last cycle was being 50% leveraged when Bitcoin was at 60K. It drops down to 20. I got forced liquidated. I lost
Hmm.
everything that I had.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah. Sorry
So
to hear that,
that's
man.
look, brother, it happens. What am I gonna
Yeah,
do? Just I can sit around and complain, or I can keep buying the best asset of all time. The best
that's
money
right.
that's ever existed. So, it is what it is. But that taught me a valuable lesson. So I think everybody needs to be smart with the Bitcoin lending products. But is that something that you have interest in at low leverage, or is it
Mm,
is it something you haven't thought about?
Maybe I'm not completely opposed to it, but it would have to be like multi-sig where I still hold on to at least part of the key. I'm not
Yep.
going to send it off to somebody and then Celsius, it'll turn into Celsius or whatever, just disappear, magically
Y-
gone.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
No, I think that's smart, and it's definitely got to be a portion of it. But I think what I envision it for, like really helping with is we've seen a lot of talk about some of the OGs, like that have been in there that have hundreds of coins that once it hit 100K, they want to enjoy their life a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
For people like that, if you're at 2, 3, 4% leverage, you're never going to get liquidated, and it's probably not your whole stash. So you still keep a ton in uh, your cold storage, self custody or multi sig, whatever you use. But that I think that's a super interesting point. When you were buying, if you were buying Manhattan real estate in the 1600s, like Saylor likes to talk about, what did you do? You didn't sell the real estate because you wanted to. You refinanced the loan, and as the
Hmm.
value went up, you took a loan against it, and that paid. Those loans are still paying today, right? Because the property values have gone so high. So I think that's really intriguing for Bitcoin, and I'm excited to see that be rolled out. I'm excited to see the terms be competitive on it. Go ahead.
Yeah, did you ever hear what Michael Jackson was doing with the Beatles? He would,
No.
I think he paid like him and Sony split it. They paid 50 million for it. Then he would get these loans against it. Same thing.
Yeah.
Instead of real estate, it was the Beatles albums,
Got
the
it.
whole catalog, and it would go up in value. And then he would get another loan and pay off the other one with it. And it was literally the infinite money glitch way before Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, dude, you can do it with a lot of assets too. I mean, like
Hmm.
you can do it with blue chip stock if you
Yeah.
have it. Um, but look, if your loan's at 8% a year, and and I don't know what they're going to be at. I'm sure they're going to be higher to begin with. They'll probably be
Yeah.
10, 11, 12%. But as this asset becomes more mature, they're going to get down into the same rates you pay for a mortgage is right what your rates are going to be for Bitcoin because of the type of collateral that it is. It's way more liquid than real estate, right?
Oh yeah.
And so it's a no lose situation for the people that are lending out that collateral. But if it goes, say you're paying 10% on it a year, but it's going up 20, 30, 40% a year, like, you're
Yeah.
still gaining. Obviously, you're gaining money in fiat terms, not in Bitcoin
Right.
terms. Um, but it's a way to kind of stay in the game. And dude, I mean, if I could have, if I would have not had to sell my Bitcoin, now for any expenses, right before a bull market,
Mhm.
I would have loved to do that.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm super excited about that. Let's kind of like moving on. Larry Fink and BlackRock came out today. I don't know if you saw it, and
I
said
did.
that the U.S. dollar is at risk of losing reserve status to Bitcoin. I don't
I
know if
think
I
it
love
will.
that he said that. Yeah, so do
Yeah.
I. I don't know if I love that he said the quiet part out loud, right?
Right.
Like he said what we're all thinking, and when I read it, I was like, "Fuck, I don't know if this is good." That he's saying that, and I have opinions on that, but I'm curious your opinion on it.
Well, I think it's inevitable. I mean, countries like North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, all these countries probably can't hold a lot of US dollars. They can't use the SWIFT network.
Yep.
They can't get on our payment rails, but they can get on Bitcoin. And then they can transact with anybody anytime they want, any amount, and there's nobody that can stop them. So I just think that that is where all the reserve assets are going to end up is in Bitcoin because it's perfect money, it's pristine, and there's no country that has control over it like America does.
Yeah. I think there's 2 points to it. The reason I don't like that he said it out loud is because they're obviously trying to pass the Bitcoin Act and
Hmm.
um, acknowledging that it can challenge the U.S. dollar could sway politicians' votes against it. So I don't love that aspect of it. But like you were saying, as far as it happening and its inevitability, I agree. And I think the bigger aspect of it is like you take all these BRICS nations, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China. I forget what the last one is, but
South Africa.
South Africa. That's it. So you take the BRICS nations, they are off of the SWIFT system, right? So we're just
Hmm.
not, it's a pain in the ass to transact with them. And you have all these intermediaries, and it's a fucking mess, to put it lightly and in layman's terms. Um, what I can see Bitcoin doing is if you have this one asset that everybody accepts, that everybody trades with, I think it indirectly incentivizes people to cooperate.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying there's not going to be any war or anything like that. I think it is obviously, if you've read, the Bitcoin standard, that fiat money encourages forever wars, which is what we've seen. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely since we've gotten off the gold standard. You can make an argument that even before that, we had it with Vietnam and Korea and all of those wars. But um, you've seen the increase of forever wars. I think that you could see that die down even sooner if Bitcoin was a reserve asset. Because now you're forced, like, everybody's on the same system. You're forced to
Hmm.
transact with these countries. It's in your best interest to be civil at the very least, you know?
Yeah, yeah, you're incentivized to say, how can I serve my neighbor instead of how can I plunder from my neighbor and take their oil or whatever. You're incentivized to cooperate because you can't take their Bitcoin and they have their private keys. So you
Yep.
have to give them something that they value more than their sats. So it forces you like these aligned incentives and everything. It's mind-boggling how deep it goes. And just when you think you get to the end of the rabbit hole, it just goes and goes and goes. It's incredible.
Yeah, and the aligned incentives aspect of everything, I think, was really Satoshi's superpower, if you want to
Hmm.
call it that. I mean, from the miners to the peer-to-peer aspect, to the countries and nation states. I mean, bottom up, like everybody. It really is a true snowball effect now, where it's like Bitcoin. Yes, we still need to have the developers working on the network. We still
Hmm.
need to be, um, I think quantum's a long way off, but I think we still need to be diligent with that. I think that's the biggest threat to Bitcoin right now, but it's the biggest threat to humanity right now. Like
Right.
anything, again, we want to talk aligned incentives. Um, Everything that's good for humanity is also good for Bitcoin. And when you
Right.
talk when the FUD now that you hear, and you don't hear a lot of it, is based off of things like a nuclear holocaust, or an EMP taking out the entire internet, or quantum computing being able to break the Bitcoin network. Um, all of that stuff is bad for humanity. Like,
Yeah.
all, you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
it's at the point now where it's not, we're past the nation states going through, we're past the nation states banning it. We're past all of the block size war, which is obviously a whole event in and of itself. Now it's just like Bitcoin is aligned with humanity, and whoever is pro humanity is naturally going to fall on that side.
Right. There's one more piece of FUD that I'd like to talk about if you have a moment.
Yeah, of
The one I
course.
hear the most is that, it's too slow. You
Yeah.
can't use it and blah, blah, blah. Nobody's will buy coffee with it. But I used to work at a credit union and I'd come in at like 6 o'clock in the morning and I would load. You ever heard of ACH files?
Yeah, of course. We
Yeah.
use them in the mortgage industry all the time.
Right. Right. I would load one of those every morning. And that's what I consider like the base layer of the fiat system. And it only transacted once per business day.
Yep.
Bitcoin transacts every 10 minutes and it never stops. So if your argument is once every 10 minutes is too slow, but then the system that you're pushing is once every business day, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think a lot of people don't understand that when they're using their debit card, that's not the base layer. They're transacting on layer two or maybe
Yep.
even three, depending on what it is. And Bitcoin can do the exact same thing.
I agree. I
Hmm.
100%. That's a great point, man. Thank you for bringing that up. Um, you are 100% right. You're not going to go buy coffee with an ACH form.
Mm-mm. Oh,
You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense. And you also brought up a good point with the layer twos and layer threes. There's a lot of positive stuff happening right now with eCash. The Lightning
hmm.
Network has grown tremendously. And we've even seen it on the Bitcoin network. The last few days, a couple people were, um, were like, I guess you could call it FUD, but they were concerned because the Bitcoin blocks weren't filling up with transactions. And it's
Hmm.
like, again, I understand to my knowledge, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The reason people get up in arms about the blocks not filling is that once the halvings are over in 100 plus years,
Hmm.
the miners are only going to make money through transaction fees. It's the only way
Right.
that they're going to make money. But you really think we're not going to have full blocks when, I mean, look at adoption so far. There's been a dip in peer to peer, obviously, because you have these intermediaries, but you're going to have so many people coming in from all angles transacting in this thing. Like,
Yeah, you
there's
talk
no
about
way you're talking about 100 years. Look at
yeah,
what it's done over 15,
yeah,
16.
you're talking like billions of people using it, and the internet then is going to be totally ubiquitous. It'll be plugged into everything. And
Yep.
by then, your refrigerator is going to be like ordering your food for you, using your Bitcoin stash. It's going to be sending it over the Lightning Network. All this stuff will be
AIs
automated.
are gonna
Yeah,
be transacting in it. Exactly.
yeah, it just makes total sense to me and you, but normies, the fiat mind can't comprehend. I like to
Yeah,
say that.
I agree. And so that's kind of as far as the FUD goes. I think most of it's gone.
Yeah.
The main thing that concerns me, if I'm being honest, is quantum, because I think that's the threat that's closest to
Hmm.
everything. But again, it's like we want to talk about aligned incentives. If you have a quantum computer, are you going to hack something and make it worthless? Like, would you hack the bit? You know what I mean? Like, again, you could have a bad actor, but like,
Yeah.
let's say, would you hack? What would be the point of hacking Bitcoin wallets if you were going to plunge it to zero immediately? Because
Well, maybe, yeah, I don't know who would want to. I mean, somebody, I mean, there's crazy people out there everywhere, but if somebody got a hold of it and busted one of Satoshi's wallets somehow, that
yeah,
would be pretty bad. But
it would be tough. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that like you'd be more incentivized. I'm not saying somebody wouldn't do it. I'm saying you
right.
would be more incentivized to hack Chase's financial system or Bank
Oh
of
yeah.
America's financial system because
Yeah.
those are dollars, right? Like that would
Hmm.
be but the minute you hack into Bitcoin, if you were able to actually hack the network, it all goes like the value drops. I'm not saying it would go to zero, but the
Right.
value drops 90% overnight.
Yeah.
So who's
Yeah. It'd be instant drop
it
too.
would be instant. So again, I think that's and I do think it's a few years off. And I think again, there's people working on it in the space. This is why, and I didn't do it, so I'll shout them out now. I didn't do it on the beginning of this episode. This is why I think donating to places like OpenSats is so important. OpenSats.org, if you guys are listening to the podcast and you want to donate some sats, I guarantee there are developers right now working on solutions for
Oh yeah.
quantum. And so no, I think all of that FUD is kind of nipped for right now, but this is why I say stay vigilant. We keep looking for new threats, but there's this line that we can toe as Bitcoiners, and I think a lot of people miss this. Like you can be optimistic and you can appreciate everything that's going on from nation state adoption to company adoption and corporate treasury adoption and all of the innovations happening on layer two, you can
Hmm.
be optimistic about all that stuff and still stay vigilant as a Bitcoiner and still
Oh
not
yeah.
trust verify, and I feel
Right.
like some people have a tough time walking that line.
Yeah. But with the quantum, I'm not even 100% sold that it can bust it. I have to see some evidence, but we're nowhere near it right now. But I mean, I guess it's possible 10 or 15 years from now, maybe, but I don't even know
Yeah,
that. But I'm not smart enough to really give an opinion one way or the other. I haven't been convinced yet that it's even an
yeah.
issue, but they
Nah,
say it
not,
might be.
I don't think it is. But I think that's also the state of where we're at right now, right? Like everything is so fucking good, but our paranoid our paranoid minds are like, where is the enemy coming from? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we've had
We're like
go ahead.
we're blessed with this ability to like see we're able to see a lot better than the fiat-minded people, or else we wouldn't be in Bitcoin at all. So that also scares us into thinking about all the risks that they're not even thinking about. So it's a
Yeah.
double-edged sword.
No, 100%. Well, they realize the risk as soon as you start talking to them about Bitcoin because they start thinking about all this shit.
Yeah,
That's the first peek into the rabbit hole is what if this happens? What if this happens? And then you knock that all down and then they're like, they eventually come over to the other side. Let me see here real quick. I'm going to take a sec and see if there's anything else that I really wanted to cover here. I mean, the BlackRock thing was huge. The other thing that I think was big is the sentiment has shifted for institutional investments like the ETF. They poured 724 million into Bitcoin last week. just the ETFs alone. And that was, the 5 weeks prior, I think they were dumping, right? So I think that's a little bit of where the market manipulation's coming, is they're like, all right, let's shake out all the weak hands. Let's get all of them out.
Yeah, these
And then,
ETF people are way more fickle than I thought they'd be. I thought they would just buy like every 2 weeks when they got paid,
yeah,
into their 401k and just hold it forever. But they dump at the least littlest thing. I'm really surprised that they're that fickle.
yeah, so am I. I think the bigger point of the ETFs, like when it'll become more stable, is when you have actual financial advisors like advising on this stuff, like, hey, keep this in your portfolio. I saw a stat that came out today that 0.002, so what is that, 0.002% of financial advisors are advising Bitcoin.
Wow. Yeah,
And if that
that's
shifted
insane.
to if that shifted to 0.2%, we'd be looking at like I think it was like a $2 million Bitcoin or something like that.
Wow. Yeah,
And
we
and
are very early.
we're so early in that sense, man. And it's only tough to comprehend because the numbers seem so big to most people, and like how far it's already grown. But again, we haven't even seen the money printer turn on, right?
No, no.
We're at 82 whatever. I don't know what it is right now. I'll tell you what, man. Since I started the podcast, I stopped looking at the price. But yeah, we're at 82,630 right now, with essentially no money printing, with like the most uncertain economic environment in probably 20 years because of tariffs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So like that's a good
Jay
sign.
Powell said they were doing like 25 billion a month in quantitative tightening. So they were,
Yeah,
I guess like deleting the dollars they printed. And I think in April next month that jumps down to 5 billion. And then after that, I think they're going to crank the money printer, turn it on. And then when that happens, we're going back over six figures again.
yeah, yeah. And I don't speculate a ton on where I think we end up this year, where I think, like, I just don't think it's important. Because that was a
Nah.
lot of the reason that I got burned, man. Is like I was new in the space, and I'm seeing all these people saying, $1 million Bitcoin this cycle, 2 million this cycle, and that's, I got levered up, right? Like, and obviously the FTX collapse probably suppressed price quite a bit, because they were fractionally reserving all the Bitcoin that they had. Uh, but still, like I got, so that's why I don't speculate on long term price. With that being said, I'm not going to give a number. It just feels like we're going much higher.
It feels like we
Get
should be above six figures right now, but it just feels a little weird.
It
But
does.
I can see with people are panicked. They don't understand what Trump's doing. Not everybody understands him. I think Bitcoiners probably do more so than the average person. Oops, share slip there.
No,
But
you're good.
I think we understand what he's doing and we accept the volatility. I mean, if you're going to get in Bitcoin, volatility is the price you pay.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. What's I forget what Sailor says about
The admission
volatility.
for the ride or something he said.
He
Can't
says
remember.
like volatility is vitality or some shit.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
yeah.
life. It's life.
I-
Volatility is life. It's
If you don't want volatility, just put it in a money market. Get your 3% or something, and go have fun. Whatever you want to do.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and Jack Mahler says this really well too, is he's like, when you're hooked up, like your heart's hooked up and you're at the hospital and there's that machine, what's the line doing? It's going up, it's going
Yeah,
up and
it's
down,
very
right?
volatile.
It's
Yeah, it doesn't stay
volatile.
this well. If it stays the same, it's not good. It's making a
No,
beeping noise.
if
Yeah,
if it's a flat line, you're dead. That's what
yeah,
that means.
yeah.
And they've tried to strip all of that out of these markets. And so now we're seeing something actually behave like, again, somewhat of a free market, globally. No shit, it's going to be volatile.
Oh yeah.
And so no, that's huge, man. That the volatility is big. So I do think we're going higher. This is something interesting that I haven't thought about until now. I wonder what I wonder how the tariffs are impacting the market versus like something like COVID. You know, so when COVID happened, Bitcoin crashes to 3K, right? Um,
Hmm.
I don't think the tariffs you can see in like the S&P 500 that they're not as big of an issue, but they're causing issues, and Bitcoin's barely moved. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it seems like the foundation is so firm that I just like I'm not saying we're over the we're over the 50 or 60% dips, um, but it just feels like there's got to like the spring is coiling at this point.
Yeah. 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 Where we're buying every day, like all of us on our group. I mean, imagine how many other people are doing that. Even though we are early, there's still huge amounts of people that are buying daily and going into cold storage. And we give the network some stability there, but
Yeah,
there's going to be volatility and people that still denominate their finances in dollars but hold Bitcoin, they're going to be selling when it's high and
yep.
buying back when it's low and just keep doing that. They'll be oscillating. And
Or
I'm
or
not
so,
interested in that, but
or selling
who
when it's
knows?
low and buying back when it's high, because most
Yeah, I've
that's
done that.
most that's what
Yeah,
most of
man.
them do. That's what
Yeah,
most of them do, man.
I sold like 20 some million sats back when it was like 17 or 18,000, and I guess
Yeah,
I kind of gave up for a while or something and paid off a credit card and oh
yeah.
my goodness, oh, I wish I had those now. I
Wait,
got nothing for that.
yep, yep. I hear you, man. I hear you. And then the only other thing that I was gonna touch on a little bit, I hope I can fucking remember it, man. What was I gonna talk about? I don't know. You got anything else that we haven't covered yet that you wanted to
Mm,
talk about?
well, the price suppression thing, I keep seeing people talking about that, and a part of me, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit and thinking, nah, it's not suppressed. It's just it's volatility. But then
Yeah,
the other part of me, I think back to the FTX stuff and all that. That 21 20 market cycle 2021 20, it
yeah,
it was so weird. It had two tops and it never really had a blow off top, and it just did not feel right. And that had to be some FTX stuff going on there, suppressing it. So another part of me says is there is suppression. It has to be real because people are doing things with it on paper. But
yeah,
I'm not smart enough to know. But whether it's being suppressed now or not, I don't know. But I think it has been
yeah.
in the past for sure.
People are probably gonna hate me for this take because it's wishy washy, but like, I just think you can't say one way definitively either.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? Like, there's people on Twitter that are like, "Hey, man, it's definitely being suppressed," and you have the other camp that it's like, "You fucking moron! No, it's not. It's not." And I'm just like, how can you just can't know? You
No,
know, like you don't know until afterwards. And
we don't
so
know what's going on and
eh,
who's doing what and for why. We don't
yeah,
know.
I mean, and you obviously have like the futures and derivatives markets and stuff like that. So I wouldn't really consider that price suppression. You know, like I
Mm.
think it's just it's trading in the same bucket. You know, so obviously it's going to make the price do weird things at weird points in time. I did remember you did spark what I was going to say before we wrap up here. So thank you for
Yeah.
that, Will. Um, the I do think that we could be seeing the end of 4 year cycles.
Yes.
And my opinion on it is I think right now everybody's like you're starting to see the sentiment shift, and this is what Bitcoin does. This is why if you're not convicted, it will fucking drive you insane. But this is what Bitcoin does is it makes you think one way completely, and then it does the exact opposite. So like I
Hmm.
think right now what's going on is you're starting to see people who really it's not so much in the Bitcoin community, but it's newbies in that community, and it's the people that hold shit coins too. They're like they're like bull market's done, and when that sentiment shifts enough, that's when I know we're gonna run up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Is
Yeah. It's like
like
the bottom signal.
it is the bottom signal. And then I think the same, but on the same aspect, I think at the end of, whatever this cycle is, again, I still think there's cycles. I just don't think it's going to be as simple as the 4 year. I think you're going to get a little boost at the halving, right? And we saw that this year,
Hmm.
right? You saw what happened? The halving happened last year, um, and the price almost doubled. Right? That's
But
what
we
the
had a run up.
halvings.
Did we have a run up before the halving? Didn't it cross
Yeah, we
75 or something? Yeah.
we had we had the preemptive run up because of the
Yeah.
halving, and then everybody thought it was going to blow off, right? And then
Yeah.
what did it do? It
It
crashed
did the
back
exact
down.
opposite. Yeah.
But then it hit that new floor, right? The new higher floor. And then it almost doubled from there, if not doubled from there. I'm not sure what that floor was. It was between 50 and 60. So we ran up to 108, right? I don't think that's a function of the bull market, right? That's a function literally of the halving. When supply gets cut in half, price doubles.
Yeah. It
That's
has
what
to.
it has
Yeah.
to. And
Yeah.
so like that's my biggest thing is like I don't think that so you have the halving last year, price doubles, right? Going into election season. And then what happens there, right? Instead of the bull market continuing to take off, you had the tariffs, you have the regulatory, you have QT going on, right? You have all of these negative headwinds
Yeah.
for Bitcoin. Uh, and the fact that we've stabilized, again, we talked about it a little bit, the fact that we've stabilized where we're at, I think is just a function of the halving. I don't think it has anything to do with the bull market.
No. And
And so,
yeah, we skipped over the 80s. I mean, if you remember back in November, we were at like 60,000. And then it
yep,
was like you blinked your eye. Next thing you knew, we were at 90. And
yep,
then it bumped up to 99 and stayed there for a while. And then it went to 109. And we completely skipped over all the 80s. I mean, we
yep.
may have been there a few days. I just barely remember it. So to
Now,
come back to the 80s is totally natural, totally normal.
yep. I definitely agree.
But at some
And
point, these 4-year cycles will end because, I mean, right now they're pumping out 450 Bitcoin a day. 2028, that drops to 225. 2032 drops to 112 and a half.
yep,
There's by then the demand will exceed 112 and a half Bitcoin a day, and then these massive 80% drops and 50%, those have got to be gone by then.
yeah. And it depends on the run up too, right?
Hmm.
Like, I could see a run up to if we get a run up to 160, I could see the drop back down to 100, 110, right? I
Yeah.
don't know that it's going to happen, right? Because like you said, we blew up from the 60s to 108, but we only really came down to 78. That was kind of
Hmm.
the low, So like we still never filled all those gaps, but the price discovery happened at 78. That's where it's so challenging to time this market and why people shouldn't be doing it,
No.
unless you're an expert trader. Because you just don't know. You can say, oh, yeah, it's going to run up and then it's going to drop. That's great. Where's it going to run up to and where's it going to drop to?
No
You
idea.
know? Yeah.
I just think over the macro long term, it's going up to the right literally forever.
Yep.
So I just accept that whatever price I pay today is going to be a bargain 4 or 5 years from now.
Yep.
And by then I'm gonna be like, man, I wish I could buy some sub 100K sats now, but those days are long gone. But we'll get
Yeah.
there. It'll be a few
Yeah.
years, but we'll get there. So just count your blessings if you're getting $80,000 Bitcoin. That's a good thing if you're buying it. Great thing.
Yeah. And nobody, look, do you think people care if they bought it 8K or if they bought it 9K? No.
No,
That's
no,
the point. You zoom out long enough and these are all rounding errors.
exactly.
Yeah. I like you zoom out 10 years, am I going to care that I bought the top at 108 or that I bought the bottom at 78? No,
Mm-mm.
right? It's
No.
going to
And
be
back in August, it dipped down to 49.8 and I bought like $600 worth. It was really every cent I had. I didn't have
yeah.
hardly anything in the bank, but it doesn't even matter that 20 years from now, that's going to be such a staggering amount of money. It's like 1.2 million sats. It
Yep.
doesn't matter if I paid 49.8 or 88.8, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's still
Yep.
going to be a huge amount of purchasing power.
Absolutely, man. Dude, this was a lot of fun. I hope you hope you had a good time on here.
Yeah, this was a blast.
Anything that you want to leave everybody with?
Yeah, you can catch me on X, Hillbilly Will 58. That's my only social media, and it's my first podcast, so I hope I did well. I
Nah,
was really nervous, but we'll see how it turns out, buddy.
nah, man, you did a fantastic job. I think the people are really going to enjoy this one. I think we got deep on a lot of topics that usually I don't cover on here. and it's refreshing to have these episodes about like what the hell is going on currently,
Yeah,
especially when we're in this price action. Like I'm putting myself in the newbie's shoes. I know it's fucking scary, dude. You're like, it's you don't
yeah.
know where it's going. It's been chopping for so long. The market it either wears you out or scares you out. So just stay in. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Will. I think all the people realize now your jig's up, dude. You're not a hillbilly.
Yeah, I might be a little, I might play one on TV.
That's
We'll leave
it.
it at that.
That's it, man. No, it was a pleasure having you on, everybody. The link for Will's Twitter will be in the show notes, so you guys can follow him there. If you guys saw on Twitter, or if you didn't, or if you came from some other avenue, someone sent you the podcast. We just launched the YouTube channel. So like and subscribe on YouTube. We're going to be posting everything there. You can find this wherever podcasts are available. Thank you so much, guys.